In today's video I've started out in Goulburn in the morning and this afternoon I'm now in Yass. I'm at a nice park actually on the Yass River which is worth a visit. It's very pleasant here. School's out so you might hear some kids in the background. So at Goulburn in the morning I visited a new sign and tree that was planted in October last month to commemorate the bicentenary of the expedition. So the tree was a sapling that came from the tree at Cooma Cottage, which I'll take you to while I'm at Yass. And it's a Piconia excelsa, which is not an Australian native, so I'm not particularly familiar with it, but apparently it's very difficult to propagate. Then I stopped at St Saviour's Cemetery, where Hovell is buried in a vault. And apparently Hovell moved to Goulburn not too long after the expedition and lived out his years there. So it was nice to visit my ancestor's grave, and it was lovely of the ladies who volunteer to take care of the graves at the cemetery. They've done a wonderful job and they've been taking care of Hovell's grave. There was also a renovation job done in 2014, I believe. So then I was in for a surprise because I was told that there was a monument that I hadn't known about before this trip that marks a location where Hume and Hovell passed through on the 12th of October. It's actually out the front of a homestead, and living in and operating that homestead is descendants of Hume's brother. So I want to read what Hovell wrote about from the 5th of October through to the 12th. On the 5th they crossed the Bargo River and through Meehan's Forest. On the 7th they stopped at a blacksmith to get some repairs done to the carts. On the 10th, Hovell stopped at Dr. Reed's house and Mr. Harper's tent at Jackwaw to compare his compass with his. So Mr. Harper, I believe, was a surveyor, and Hovell wanted to stop and compare his compass with Mr. Harper's, and he found that one of his compasses had a slight error. It says, found one to have a little error. Now, he doesn't actually say if he corrected that error or if that error remained throughout their journey. On the 11th, Hume and Hovell went across some of the worst country I ever saw, and at dusk they reached the carts which were waiting for them at the waterhole under the Government Hill opposite Broughton's sheep station on Goulburn Plains, where we remained all night. Now it was on the 12th of October where they crossed through to Broughton's yards, and this is where the monument is, and this was on their way to Hume's outstation. So when I arrived at this monument, it's at a place called Goulburn, and because I couldn't find the monument at first, I popped into the homestead and delightfully discovered that two people there were actually descendants of Hamilton Hume, John and Jenny. And Jenny was kind enough to give me a personal tour of the homestead. So that was an unexpected pleasure. The homestead's packed full of history. It's a bit like a museum, and it was an unexpected added bonus to be able to be shown around and to meet descendants of Hume, well, Hume's brother. So it was the following day on the 13th when they arrived at Hume's outstation. They actually stayed there a few days, and now the homestead at that location is called Collingwood, and there's a monument on Culleran Road that marks the location, so I visited there. So this is where it all began, where Hume and Hovell set out into lands unknown to colonials at the time. They spent a few days here. They travelled to Lake George and back to get distances, and then they set out from here on the 17th of October, 1824. Just behind me, over my shoulder there, is the Collingwood Homestead. Good name. Not biased or anything. So as I said, I'm in Yass now, but I couldn't not stop at the Gunning Library on my way through. Gunning is just past where Hume's outstation was, and I heard that the library and the local schools had put a lot of effort into putting together a display commemorating the bicentenary of the Hume and Hovell Expedition. And they did a wonderful job. There was so much to see. I can't even show it all here. but it was so lovely to see the effort put in. So I'm signing off for today, and I'll see you tomorrow.